to share with you about Livingstone Shire Council's journey and how they transformed their planning and building services with a people and customer first approach. So before we get into how that worked, so a little bit about us. So my name's Jade. So I started my career in local government about 10 years ago at Hawkesbury City Council. After that, I moved on to Penrith Council, and I thought I knew all about local government, so I thought I would step outside of my comfort zone and take a job as a consultant at Redman Solutions. It's been 3 years since I started with Redman, and very quickly I learnt that all councils are different. So I've worked with almost 90 councils since starting at Redman, and I was lucky enough to work with the team at Livingstone. So today we have Alister Gill here, so he's the Technology Officer at Livingstone Council. He's been there for just over 7 years, and he looks after Council's information management system, property system and customer request system. So Redman Solutions, so a little bit about us. We started out in 2006, and our company is purely based around local government. So most of our team have previously worked in local government. So when we deliver our services, we understand how you feel, as we've been in those same shoes.
Yep.
Let the technology people do the technology, yeah?
I'm an expert at pushing the buttons. Okay, so a quick intro to Livingstone Council to start with. We're on the central Queensland coast. We're neighboured by a lot of large regional councils. In 2009, Livingstone amalgamated with 3 other shires into the Rockhampton Regional Council. It was a very large area and a lot of diverse regions. Livingstone is very coastal. Rockhampton has cattle country. It has everything. It's huge. So over that time, we adopted Rockhampton's policies, processes, software systems. And in 2013, the option came for Livingstone to de-amalgamate from Rockhampton. So I know there are some councils that are still going through the amalgamation process. We've gone through that and we're coming out the other side again. So in 2013, when that decision was made, the split came down as Livingstone gets a third of Rockhampton's assets, a third of Rockhampton's debt, and an exact copy of Rockhampton's systems. So our team came down with everything set in stone. This is how your life will be, go. And at that point, we had capital works projects that were half done. We had all this other work that had come from splitting a section of a council off. And our job was to keep the lights on, keep the systems running, keep the roads maintained. And for a number of years, that was our job. We just kept things running. After a couple of years of consolidation, we said, okay, things are still running, nothing's exploded yet. Let's see if we can make things better. One of the main things that came across was our processes. Things were starting to get a little bit stale. When you smash 4 councils together and you have 4 different managers from 4 different councils and 4 different ways of doing things coming together, that sort of thing it's chaos. So splitting that off and keeping that legacy with us, we had the opportunity to start making some of those changes. Okay, so one of the things that really came across, that customer interaction with our building, plumbing, development applications. How do these work? What's working? What's not? We're very lucky to have a fairly tightly integrated community. So we got that feedback very, very quickly. Okay, why can't I do this online? So think of this as our building plumbing applications. I could either be a person on the street who wants to build a shed on my property, or I could be a private certifier that's wanting to do 50 or 60 or 100 of these a year. Okay, so that interaction going from a one-on-one person who has no experience with working with council, I just want to put a shed on my property, please, sir, to a private certifier who does this as their job and needs to do bulk processes of this. How do we make this one system work for both of those people? One needs their handheld, and one just wants us to get out of the way so they can do their job. My personal experience was the first of those options. I was the guy on the street. I work for council. I'm an IT guy, so when I called up the development team and said, hey guys, where do I email my building application to? And they said, no, you have to drop it into customer service. I said, okay, all right. Well, I suppose I've got a printer here. Oh, no, you need to print 4 copies of that and bring it down. And I'm sitting here on a computer, and you're sitting over there on your computer because I can see you, and they're both the same system. Why can't I just email you this document? And they said, no, this is the way we need to do things. Okay, so from my perspective, that's just ludicrous. I don't want to have to walk over to the printer, print out 4 copies of the same thing, walk it over to you. You're going to give it to your other person. They're going to scan it in, and then they're going to print it again and put it in the file. Come on. Okay, so that's the customer experience that we don't want to have. The next step is the internal customers. So the building, plumbing, development guys, they have legislative turnaround times that they need to meet. So they might have a period of time that this needs to be done. If a customer drops their 4 copies of the document onto a customer service desk, and then that goes into a shuffling process at customer service, and then there's some more paper shuffling in the records department, and they might scan it and they might print it again and they might build a paper file. That file will go to one of the units. Okay, well, if another unit needs to get access to that document, do we need to internal mail that to each other? Or are they going to walk across the hall and get that? Okay, well, where's the control over where this document sits? So I'm sure a lot of councils here have had a process that's either similar or is how they can recognise that. Okay, the second bit is single point of truth. If I'm in the building unit and I send a request off to the customer and say, hey, I need some more information about this, when I receive that back after 10 days because I've posted this request to them and they've posted it back, that sits with me. Okay, is that getting integrated into all our other systems? Do we have that continuity of this customer experience happening? Okay, so with these sort of things in mind, we said, okay, we need to adjust how we're talking to our customers with this application process. How are we handling that experience, and how are we doing it internally? Is it working for us? At that point, I was sitting in a meeting, and one of the guys who had come from another council fairly recently said, hey, I use this great thing and it's called Trapeze. It might work for us. And there were sage nods around the room. Yep, we should do that. And I don't know about other councils, but I know ours has a really bad history of seeing a problem, seeing a solution that might just fit it, and then buying that solution and putting it in and going, okay, it's done. But that doesn't work. So we've gone through that learning process in the past, and out of that we've said we need some assistance with this. We've had really good experiences working with Redman in the past on other areas, and at that point we gave Jade a ring and said, hey, we want to do this sort of thing, can you help us through that process?
So the first time I visited Livingstone Shire Council was in March last year. So like Alister said, we know that when we implement technology solutions and don't look at the people or the process, it doesn't work. So you spend all this time and money putting in these systems, and then everyone just prints everything off and makes their own hard copy files anyway. So rather than looking at the technology, what we did was we did what we call a discovery workshop, where we got people in the room to sit down and talk about what their processes are, learn a little bit about what they wanted to achieve. So I flew from Sydney up to Rockhampton and drove down to Yeppoon, and when I got there, everybody was already in the room, and I expected half a dozen, maybe a dozen people, sort of one rep from each team. But instead, when I walked in, I got the whole of the planning team, the whole of the building team, the health inspectors, a couple of people from customer service, 3 people from IT. And I thought, wow, there are so many people in this room. This is going to be really challenging. How am I going to get everyone in the room on the same page? But it turns out that having everybody in the room right up front actually was why Livingstone were able to achieve what they did. So rather than just finding out a little bit about what the manager wanted to do and what the admin coordinator thought, we were able to identify all of the challenges and engage with all of the people that were involved in the process. So at the end of the day, we identified 3 key challenges. So one was the lack of integration between core systems. So they were using Pathway and ECM for their document management system, but the 2 systems didn't talk to each other. So if you generated a document in Pathway, went to search for something in ECM, you're not going to find it. So that was the first one. The second was the resistance to change. So while some people in the room were really on board and ready to adapt a paperless process and improve processes, there were others that weren't so willing to change. So two people in particular that stood out that day was Bradley, who is Council's building surveyor, and Nat, who is the senior plumbing inspector. And Bradley in particular sat there in the room the whole time like this. Arms crossed, this isn't going to work. And he said quite openly, I've been working with paper for 30 years, it's never going to work, you might as well give up now. So that was a big challenge. And then the third challenge was that Council had already committed to deliver an online lodgement portal at the end of March, or April, sorry. So we had 3 months to totally turn this process around. So we needed to get all of these people on board, we needed to get the systems integrated, and we had 3 months to do it.
So from my perspective, the IT team is there to facilitate the work done by the rest of Council, and one of the main issues that we... It's a revelation!
Oh, sorry, I must have gone ahead. Sorry.
We're a small team, but we try. So one of our big concerns was there's this solution, and we could just try and put it in, but do we really know the system? Are there going to be dark corners and nooks and crannies and cobwebs that we don't know about? But also, the system that we're going to put in, is that going to integrate into our processes, or are we going to be able to change our processes so that this fits? The worst case situation for our side of things is the situation gets put in and it's all great and there's fireworks and then 6 months later no one uses it. From our perspective, that's really bad, because not only have we put the expense forward, we've put the effort forward, we've inconvenienced everyone, but if they're not going to use it, not only is that wasted effort, but it also undermines our ability to then work later on with these people when the next thing comes along that we say, hey, this is really going to help you, and they go, well, last time. Okay, and we don't want that. As an IT team, we need to have the solutions as fully realised solutions that aren't just going to work for the staff internally, but are actually going to deliver for the customer as well. So they were our main potential concerns with how the situation was going.
So we needed to then come up with an approach that was going to let us achieve all of these things. So at Redman Solutions, we like to take what we call a people process technology approach, and in that order. So first of all, we had to start with people. So we needed to get Nat and Bradley on board, and they were both in senior positions. So if they weren't on site, there was no way that the rest of the team were going to come on board either. So we spoke to Bradley and said, but why are you so resistant to this? What can we do to help you? And one of the things that IT had done was given all of the people that needed access offsite iPads. So the planning team all had iPads and they were happy. The planning team were quite willing to adapt the changes and had been using the iPads already. Bradley, on the other hand, hated his iPad. Now, there's nothing wrong with an iPad. It's a very popular solution and works well for a lot of things. But in Bradley's case, it wasn't what he needed. So one of the things that he had complained about was he couldn't see his plans when he was on site using that iPad. One, it was too small, and the glare was bad. So we spoke to Alister and said to Alister, is this the solution? Does he have to use this? And Alister was quite willing to help him find something else.
Yeah, it's probably worth noting that when he came forward with that issue when we were doing the discovery process, it wasn't that I don't like my iPad and it's glary, it was I don't use this thing. And I'm sure everyone's experienced that before. No, just get it away from me. Okay, and that's fair enough. They know what the issue is in their head, but we don't necessarily know what that might be. So that discovery process that Jade's talking about really starts to tease that stuff out. What is actually the issue that you have with this? And it wasn't that it was broken or that he couldn't get access to what he needed to. It was that the screen was too small, and that when he was out in the sunlight, the glare off it was just meant that he couldn't use it. And when he's got a nice handy backup, which is the big fat paper file in his car, why not just go and get that and read it? It's a known quantity. It just does the job. So when we realised that that was his issue, it wasn't just him sitting back being a curmudgeon about it. We said, okay, well, we're trialling the larger iPad Pro. Do you want to take that outside and see if you can do it? And he did it, took it outside and came back and, this is amazing. I can get it. And as quick as that, we turned someone who was really heavily resistant to this process to now our biggest asset, because he had the ears of all the other guys in the team.
The next thing we had to look at was the process. So we went through quite a detailed process review. We looked at little things like naming conventions, but one of the key parts of the process was that integration piece. So we could have implemented Trapeze right there and then, and the planning team and the building surveyors could have started measuring and assessing their plans electronically straight away. And that would have brought a lot of productivity improvements for those particular users. But what it would have meant for the admin team is that they're going to have to collate all of this information that's come in from the lodgement system, and they're going to have to reorganise it all and manually process all of that into the document management system. So what we want to do is we want to find something that's going to bring productivity improvements across the whole team and the whole process, not just for individual people. So we had to slow down on the Trapeze implementation, and we had to sort of get all of our ducks in a row and get that integration sorted.
Yeah. So at the point that we had Pathway talking hand in hand with ECM, and a way that ECM could have a connector to then talk hand in hand with Trapeze, at that point we were ready to start making moves against that.
So the third thing we then had to look at with our approach was a pilot. So we've focused and we've done a lot of work internally with the people inside the council that were involved, but we needed to also engage those people outside of the council, so the regular applicants and other people in the community. So one of the ways we did that was we started a pilot and trialled that electronic process. One of the people that was crucial in this pilot and collecting feedback from the community was Jo McLennan. So Jo unfortunately couldn't be here today, but she was the person who really got those applicants involved right up front. So Jo continued to liaise with applicants prior to implementation about what they needed, what would help them to be able to lodge their applications. Once the implementation process had started, they started to use it and gave feedback, and now after they've gone live, Jo continues to get feedback from them on how it can be improved.
Yeah. So one of the examples of that was one of the private certifiers that works fairly closely with council is based in Rockhampton, which is about a 40-minute drive away. And to front up to the customer service desk with their however many applications in quadruple was an issue for them. So from that customer service standpoint, going up, visiting them, running them through the trial system before we'd gone into production and saying, how does this work for you? Would you be able to put your applications in here? Is there any information you need? Trialling that with a few people who had done applications recently for council, so people like me who don't know anything about that process, going through and saying, is this enough information for you? Is this too much? How's the work going? Just getting that close feedback, quick feedback loop, so that we knew exactly what the customers were going to get out of this process when we did it. Okay, so this is a little quote from Jo. Just for a bit of context, Jo works between the director of the community services group, so that handles all of the compliance, building, plumbing, development, and those customer complaints as they were coming through on the way to the director's desk would all go past her desk. So she had a really good insight into what the community was experiencing, and also what her staff were doing as an admin manager. So we had a person at the key point that really gave us some value.
So it's been now more than 12 months since Livingstone have been live with electronic lodgement and assessment, and the results are that they're now receiving more than 90% of their applications electronically, and all of the staff within building, plumbing and planning are all managing the applications fully electronically.
So if you think about that from a workflow perspective, all of those steps that used to have the paper shuffling and we send it to this team and they shuffle it and we send it to this team and they put their stuff in the file, all of that process is gone. The simple time factor of I'm going to post you a letter and it might get there in 3 days is gone. So from a customer turnaround perspective, I can lodge an application online at home, The private certifier can do it from wherever. That gets into our system, gets registered into our document management system immediately. All the internal teams are looking at the same copy of the document, so there's no worries about a single point of truth there. And it also means that the teams that are assessing these can get on them immediately. So with the system we've got currently, Pathway and ePathway handle the application coming into the system. It's immediately lodged into ECM, which is our document management. People doing the assessment can pull it out of ECM and bring it into a system like Trapeze to do their measurement, to do their markup, to do their stamping. All of that happens digitally. We never have to print anything. And that process is seamless from the start to the end. If we need to get information requests from a customer, we send that off an email. They get it immediately. They can respond. It's straight back on the person's desk. So that turnaround time for customer feedback and for our own internal legislative requirements has been hugely changed by this process happening. If we were only to put in one facet of it, so say if we just put Trapeze in on its own, the document would have come in digitally, but we would immediately have had to print it and then go through the whole process that we would have done normally, potentially scanning it in a few more times as that process went on. So we realised with Jade's assistance that implementing one side digitally, if all of this other stuff isn't in place, it's completely pointless. It adds another step and more complexity into the chain. So we've really got value out of that process.
And from a customer service point of view as well, they've now they can track their application online. So rather than having to make a phone call to the council to find out where it's up to, they can see that status on council's website. So that's helped reduce the number of inquiries that have had to come through to council over the phone. I've just lost my train of thought.
Yeah, that's right. So there's things like the not properly made requests that the development teams tend to get. So someone like me who's ignorant has put in a request and is missing half the information. The turnaround time to get that back to the person is less than halved. And with another system that we've put in place for having a planning scheme online, it's reduced that nearly to nothing. So that we can get more information to the customer as they need it.
So returning to Livingstone Council sort of 6 months on after their implementation, it was like walking into a different team. So walking into the same room with all of those same people, no one had their arms crossed and everyone was happy. Jo, when I was speaking to her about the transition, she said, Jade, it is like Bradley is a different person. She said, we've been trying to get him on board for years and it's finally happened. And it just goes to show you that there's not a one-size-fits-all and that you need to engage people and talk to them about what those challenges are and help find solutions that will address their requirements. So Bradley's gone from being the resistor to now being the biggest advocate for this change. So
it's probably also worth noting that in the discovery process, we realised that a lot of the team's processes were completely different. So their workflow for the development section was completely different from the building section, completely different from the plumbing section. And that can be related to the work they have to do is different, but there has to be some commonality there in council. So teasing out that process to see where these things are different and where we can adjust that to make it coincide with how the system needs to work was a major factor of getting it done. Nat, who's the senior plumbing inspector, has gone along the process with us right from the start, as Jade mentioned about us providing iPads. Back in the day, that was for updated, up-to-date access to the Building Act and all of those sort of legislative documents as something they could have on file rather than the piece of paper that's out of date as soon as you print it. So he's come through that system and he's answered a couple of questions for us in a video just around that process.
Hi, I'm Nat Drury, Principal Plumbing and Drainage Inspector at the Livingstone Shire Council. What's not to love? As a Plumbing and Drainage Inspector, I'm able to assess, annotate. All inspections are done paperlessly. For us, it's a great step forward. From a lodgement process, we asked and required 4 sets of building plans.
So several rather large documents times 4 to make an application up. It was a huge amount of paper and a huge amount of work.
There was issues the whole way through the process. Everything from making sure you stamp the right plans to go out to clients. That was a major issue, and the copies go to the right people.
Time delays sort of started almost instantly, so as a customer you would hand over your proposed plans to customer service. Customer service would then pass them on to our records department to process into our computer systems. From there we would come to plumbing administration to actually build the file. So there'd be quite a lengthy delay from when you hand over your application to when the plumbing inspector actually gets to start their assessment. In a worst case scenario, sometimes that could have been up to 50% of our legislative time frames. So you're behind the 8 ball from the get-go. From now with digital, so as soon as the application is lodged, we are able to view it and start our assessment. So in a perfect situation, we are able to view those plans on the day that they are lodged and build their file electronically, complete the application process via stamping on the computer and then emailing it out almost instantly. We definitely have got a lot of positive feedback, especially through the inspection process. We're out visiting a plumber on site, you complete an inspection, and once it's all good and you hit go on the iPad, they instantly get an email sent to them with a generated past inspection certificate. This has been a process over several years, not several months. So the process started with being handed iPads to use as a tool in the field to keep up-to-date legislation at your fingertips. So that was sort of the first step for the guys, and then just slow step-by-step process to where we are today, to have the confidence as an inspector to send out a certificate in the field. Get in and embrace it. It has been a great experience to be involved with the fully electronic, using the iPads. It's been great, and just step by step, steady as she goes.
We only actually had time for one question. I do apologise for running a little late. So
we will be available afterwards, so if you have any
absolutely.
questions.
So who?
How's take up for people who've not lodged development agreements or debt before? So newbies.
New customers? Yep.
Mums and dads.
So the system we have, if I can sort of step you through it, we have planning exchange that's on our website, and people can say, I live at 123 whatever street, I want to build a shed, and they click on those two, and it gives them the entire planning scheme that they need to address. So if their property has steep land, bushfire considerations, all of that gets spelled out for them. When they do their application, they submit against those criteria. That gets lodged into ePathway. Once that's in, it all gets registered via the system and sent through to the correct areas. If there's any measurement, annotation, scanning stuff, Trapeze handles that and hands it right back into ECM, so it's that single point of truth. So the customer experience has been pretty positive. We heard loud and clear that they want to be able to do things digitally. So if you're talking to your bank now, you get an email to say, hey, we've spoken to you. If you're talking to Telstra or another company, that's just the standard for the industry now. You want to be able to do things online. So people coming in with that expectation, when we weren't able to provide that before, said, well, why not? You should be in the 21st century. So we really heard that loud and clear. So when we were able to fill that need, the uptake's been really positive.
We'll take one more question down the back.
I was just wondering with regards to the customer service team,
Yep.
if they're involved at all in the workflow?
Yep. So when we first implemented the ePathway side of things, we had set up a way that the customer service team would vet every request when it came through. As we added more, so this hasn't been a big bang approach, it's been incremental. We very soon found that wasn't going to be scalable, because for them to vet every request that came on the web, we might as well not have put it on the web. So with the customer service team, they have immediate access to the planning section itself. They can see what documentation has been put on there. They can see whether the departments have made it a not properly made application. So if people are ringing in, customer service have got access to exactly the same data as everyone else. And instead of having to put that call through to another unit and saying, all right, I'll wait for the duty planner and see when they're available, or such and such will give you a ring back, they can say, all right, it's been checked by this person, this person, this person, this is the status. You can expect a call from such and such a person within a period of time. So it's given them more information, essentially. payments can be made online as part of that. Yeah.
So how do they know how much they've got to pay?
Good question. I'd have to get the one to do it.
That might be a question for later on.
Yep.
Depends what state you're in, it's different.
Yep.
I'd like to thank Alister for bringing a certain IT perspective to customer service.
That's right. I try not to be too robotic.
Oh no, it's fantastic. It's something that I think we all want, and we're in the process, I think, collectively of getting our IT teams towards that goal, and it's great to see that it actually can happen. So thank you very much, and Jade, for showing us the synergy that Redman Solutions brings to these sorts of processes. So thank you very much.
Thank you.